You're listening to the IMT Show with Mike Sims. Now here is your host.
I know that that you got involved with me with looking at my books and stuff.
Yeah,
and,
let me talk about that and give you a plug on your own show.
thank you.
So the situation with the Lazarus Game. Several things came together when I read the Lazarus Game. I forget who gave it to me. Excuse me. Was it Lenny Rico?
Lenny Rico, right?
Oh, okay. So she gave it to me and I thought, what is all this stuff? There's an awful lot to read. I'm like everybody else in Hollywood. They call it the Hollywood 40. It's really the 20 and it's really the Hollywood 10. And I said, I'm not going to read all this. But when I skimmed the outline, when I got to the Lazarus Game, a couple of things hit me. One is the way it reminded me of My Man Godfrey, a William Powell, Myrna Loy movie. Right. So I was fascinated by this idea of this female vigilante who gets things done cerebrally, not with a gun or anything like that.
Right.
And that's sort of what, and the Lazarus Game, which is a game where people who ought to know better do terrible things to underlings in big business. And some awful things get done behind these Crystal Palace walls. And she intercedes for the person being preyed upon and wins. And I thought, wow, this is a really cool idea. So, so also, not to be too mercantile about it, it's a female lead. It could be, as the showrunner wanted, it could be a Latinx female lead. And you reach a lot of hot buttons when you set this up. So do you want to get how I set things up?
Yeah, I was going to say to kind of give everybody a little bit of background on the Lazarus Game is when I wrote the Vicky character, and I originally wrote the book Victim, and it was Vicky when she's in her 40s and she's wanting a life of levity and not wanting to get involved until a guy that's been stalking her decides to attack her in her home. And instead of turning him over the place, she just beats the crap out of him because she has like 4 martial art black belts, and decides to get in every aspect of his life and teach him a lesson. And that's what she kind of does. She kind of destroys people and then brings them back up. And the book got involved in his life, and it got involved in a lot of other issues. And people, when they read it, I only intended one book, but I wrote her whole life in my mind, and they wanted to know more. So I decided to make it a 6-book series, and I wrote Vicky. I made Victim number 4 in the series because of the age. Wrote Vicky, her early years to first jobs out of college, and you kind of see the beginnings of her, how she gets all these harsh things that come at her that start developing her character and needing to resolve things. It's like life is throwing her in this crucible to prepare her for something. And then Valkyrie, the second book, was when she ended up dealing with this corporate game played on interns called the Lazarus Game.
Correct. This is what turned me on.
Yeah, this is the game that it was the intention of the game on the front was to allow interns an opportunity to be in a corporate world that they never could. But it really was being a betting game among executives to see if they could get interns to do a lot of things that they shouldn't be. And so she decided this game needed to end. I've completed the third book, which is Violet. And Violet is a global, powerful woman that sits behind the scenes of governments. And she's the inventor of the Lazarus Game. And she is not happy with Vicky interfering with the Lazarus Game, and decided that she's going to take her on personally. So that's the theme of that book, and that completes the prequels. And then we'll move on to later the next books, which will be her destiny, what this is all summing up to. But yeah, the Lazarus Game is it's a subset of the book Valkyrie, and it's one of two of the main storylines in that book. But when Lenny had brought that to you, and you were interested in that, I was like, I was like, wow, this is great. And
so you can see, you know, I've forgotten for a moment that these low execs were selected like the Forgotten Man from the dust heap, and so that they had great dreams, and they were really being used, and so Vicky becomes kind of the super bully, because we've all gone to, because everybody is a bully in one sense and being bullied in another, and she's the one who intercedes for these people. The next book would be either a second movie or a second season, bringing Vicky into that. So you can see why this was extremely appealing to me. And then there's the question of whether the first season would be the entire Lazarus Game, or the Lazarus Game broken down into a season or a half a season. There's lots of things to do. But here's the thing, I do not like, although I have sold things before where I just walk in and say, here's my big idea. I like to go in with the package. You know, I had to correct myself. I've been telling for years the story that I really dislike the way you pitch projects these days, because you need a deck, you need a Bible, you need all these things. Right. And I pump myself and I said, well, I remember walking into Albie Heck when he was the head guy at Nickelodeon, and they were just starting to do movies. And I said, I want to do Teenage Mad Max. And he said, cool. And the next thing I saw was a check, because he got the idea. But what I'd forgotten and was reminded in a pitch by my son, I had Melissa sitting on the couch next to me. So he put the two things together and he said, oh, Melissa Joan Hart as a Teenage Mad Max. Yes. And so it's always good to have somebody with you. There was this, I did a movie called Killer Party with nobody really in it, but it turned out to be a pretty good party. It was pitched to me by a friend of a friend, Ken Kaufman, who was one of the best TV movie producers ever. I mean, such a great script developer. He could close up holes without opening up other holes while doing it, which almost everybody else does.
wow.
And his partner, the late Mike Lepner, also a wonderful guy. And they used to do movies like the Anne Frank story, things like that, TV movies. Really excellent, elegant stuff. Nothing like this stuff I was doing at the time or still doing. And when Mike came to me and said, I want to do this movie about, it was originally called April Fool, but we got beaten out by another producer, so it was called Killer Party. I said, you know, I'm going to be a stain on your record. He says, yeah, but I want to do a horror movie and I want to do it with you. So anyway, we wound up pitching it because these guys were righteously connected to Frank Mancuso, who was the capo de tutti copy at Paramount at the time. So we're sitting on Frank's couch and I'm pitching this story, and I have a nicely evolved little story. And it's clear he's not listening. It's just clear. It's not like he's taking phone calls or getting a BJ under the desk. He's just not listening. So when we get back to Lepner's office, he was down, he was feeling pretty down, but there were already like 14 messages on his desk saying, could Barney put that in on a tape and blah, blah, blah. We really want that. And at the end of the day, we wound up selling it to MGM, and MGM made it. And like I said, it's got some nice reviews, but the key thing was, looking back, I could see what Mancuso was saying. He's sitting there, and on his couch are two guys, three actually, that are pitching them a horror movie, a body count horror movie. One guy is famous for doing TV movies on time, on budget, win an Emmy. The other guy just did Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and made $1 zillion. He didn't need to listen to it. This is what he was going to do. There was almost nothing. We could have sold him our underwear. This is what he wanted to do. So I always want to go in with a package. And so I've been, here and there looking at people who might be Vicky, people who might want to direct it, people who, because again, we're not selling a script, we're selling a development off a book.
Right.
So, that's where I am and where I have been on the Lazarus Game.
And which I greatly appreciate, and I hope that something turns out for all of us that's really big out of it.
Me too.
It's it's a series. It's a series of books that, like I say, I only intended to write one, but everybody wanted to know more about Vicky, and I've even had some rape survivors that have wrote me emails, and it's been very humbling. They said that it was like reading their life, reading Vicky's life, and they just and that's something that really touched me. But and then of course one woman told me that it was like it was some really good revenge ideas in there, and I was like, it's not a how-to book. So it's don't take it seriously. So but
these are the greatest things that happen to artists of any kind. I had going back to Killer Party for a second. I often go to Friday Part 4 final chapter events. I don't charge for my signature because I'm not a face, so I'm a writer, but I will sign. You bring in something, I'll sign it. And one day I'm at one of these things at Dark Delicacies in Burbank, and a guy and a gal walk in with a full mounted one sheet of Killer Party, and they're both balancing it. It was such a warm feeling to have somebody come in for something else that almost nobody knows of.
right.
My favorite part of making any movie is to show up a half hour before call. Runner attack. A half hour before call, mount the tallest trailer there with a cup of coffee, and watch on the first day and watch the film community stream in, because I've written something down that has given them their dream, and they're now working on them. That's the greatest feeling ever.
It's incredible.
I went to a party 3 or 4 years ago where a French woman who's not an actress, but a what do you call it? An exec, took me aside and said, "Sabrina saved my life."
Wow.
I said, "What?" She says, "Yeah, I was drugging, and I was getting close to prostitution for drugging, and I saw that, and I said, I want to be like that." Not the magic, but it's when these things happen to anybody. This happened to you, and this happened to me. I'm not going to say that's better than the money, because the money's great, but it's a great thing. It's just a great thing. It's something you don't get painting cars.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always humbled to just when somebody reads my books,
Yeah.
that somebody takes the time to read it and to know my mind and my imagination. But when it actually touches them, yeah, that's a whole different level.
We are all net depositors in the World Image Bank. We got to put good images in there.
I like that. Fascinating.
Any
So-
any last minute questions before I scoot out of here?
Well, is there anything that's on the horizon beyond Vicky, or anything that you can talk about or hint about?
Yeah, I can't talk too much about them, because when you talk about them, the energy kind of leaks out like in a tire with a slow leak.
Right.
but I have sold a graphic novel that was a favorite of mine for years to A&E. The definition of sold in this case is they made an offer. I don't hate it. It probably happened. What else? I'm working on a I'm working on a script. I finished the script, but you're always working on it. Called Everybody Loves Carmen. It's a rom-com set in a production of Carmen in Buenos Aires. My collaborator on it was an Argentinian stand-up comic. And there's a guy who wants to do it, but he wants to do it in Spanish. And I'm thinking, okay, fine, but all I have is high school Spanish and not much of that. So I'm really looking to get it set up in English, but I'm supposed to speak with a really highly placed director of Spanish language rom-coms this weekend. So I will probably cave and have a movie in Spanish. That's pretty much it.
It's a big market from what I hear.
Well, it's changed quite a bit. Yeah, it used to be nothing, and now it's huge. I actually have what I'm actually aiming at, because I have a mystical connection with Spain. I have a cousin who did a family tree. We always think we're from Lithuania, which we are, but he traced it back further than that into Portugal in the 16th century, 15th century, so that we are actually what's called Ladrinos, something like that. We descend from the people who were kicked out of Spain because we were Jewish, and Portugal as well. I don't know what the connection is. I really wanted to do Guernica. I really want to do the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, the Americans who volunteered to fight in the Spanish Civil War in 37. And so, but now what's happening is, it's either Telemundo or Galavision or somebody like that is doing a movies, and I have a project with them for the Latinx market, but in English, because the English-speaking Latinx market is huge, specifically here in the U.S., but also throughout Latin America. So if hopefully I can turn Everybody Loves Carmen into that, but more likely it'll be something else.
Well, you know, I wrote a book that's an all age appropriate book called Southern Cross, which was about a young boy in a poor village in Mexico, and he discovered he wants to be an astronomer, and he discovers one night that the stars are all wrong and that him and his whole village are not in Mexico anymore. And so he's got to figure out how they got there and prove to his village that they're not where they're supposed to be. Number one,
The Australians?
They got moved,
Yeah.
but he had when I wrote the book, some people I know that actually were raised in a poor village in Mexico told me, he said, how did you know this is what we eat and everything? Well, I said, well, this is normal diet for a lot of places, and not just Mexico. And they, but it was nice that I got it right. And then I had a guy an actor that dubs movies into Spanish in South America. And he was fairly famous in South America. And he wanted to translate my book and do an audiobook in Spanish. And for virtually nothing, he just wanted to do it because he'd never done an audiobook before. I said, great. And so he did a great job. And he told me, he says, like 6 months later, he says, I love doing your book so much. I started an audiobook company to translate books into Spanish.
What a great idea.
And now we have a staff of 20 people. We've done over 2 million words, and we're highly successful now. And I said, well, I'm glad my book got you going.
Would he consider doing it as a there's got to be some business to be done here, but we'll talk about it. I want to I want to focus on the Lazarus Game. And if you haven't seen My Man Godfrey, I encourage you to see it.
It's well, I appreciate you you're endeavoring and helping there, and that's it's a great honor for me. It really is, Barney.
Okay, well, I thank you and I appreciate it. But I'm really doing it for myself.
I understand, but it's still, I'll take it either way.
Good for you. All right. It was great talking to you.
Well, thank you for being on my show.
Thank you for listening to the IMT show with Mike Sims. The views expressed by guests are their own and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The IMT show is an opinion show and not to be taken as serious personal, legal, tax or financial advice. It is meant as entertainment only. IMT show, Mazarov or Mike Sims is not responsible for ad content. For more information on show schedules and content visit www.mazarov.net/IMT.